You should be live. Go. You guys are live.
Good time zone, everybody, and welcome to DragonCon Goes Virtual. I'm JR, and I'll be moderating this panel today talking about Winds of Winter, and I have a bunch of special guests that are going to be discussing the same thing. So we got a lot to cover in the little time that we have, because we could probably talk about this for days. I don't know about you guys, but I know I could.
Oh, for sure.
Good time zone, everybody, and welcome to DragonCon Goes Virtual. I'm JR, and we have an echo. And I have special guests that are going to be discussing the same thing. So we got a lot to cover in that little time.
We need High Fantasy Track to mute their microphone.
Oh, for sure. Good time zone, everybody.
Sorry. Trying to mute myself.
There we go.
I think we got rid of it now. All right, there we go. Now we're back. Always going to be tech problems going live and virtual. So if everybody could please introduce themselves really quick and a little bit about you, and then we'll jump right in.
Who wants to start?
Go for it, Van.
I'm kind of the center square here, but that's fine. I'm Van Allen Plexico. I am the author of 19 novels and assorted other works, and I'm a professor at Southwestern Illinois. But I also have podcast a lot over the years about Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire. We did virtually every week episodes there for the last 3 or 4 seasons, and I've been on the last couple of panels, the last couple of DragonCons about this. And so it's nice to get to talk about the next one that allegedly is coming one of these days.
I'm Chloe. You guys might know me from the internet as a host of Girls Gone Canon. We are a podcast that is covering both His Dark Materials TV show, the books, and also the companion trilogy, The Books of Dust, and the A Song of Ice and Fire series. We just hit our 100th episode of A Song of Ice and Fire episodes this week. We cover A Song of Ice and Fire point of view by point of view. So we only read chapters from the point of view characters at a time. And we just started Asha. So you can check that out over at Girls Gone Canon.
Everyone, my name is Rebecca Fant. You can find me online at Chewbecca Cosplay. First and foremost, I'm just a nerd. I love all things fantasy and sci-fi. I love to cosplay. I'm hoping to work on a season 7 Sansa and an Arya for my sister this coming winter. By day, I'm a teacher. I teach history, and by night, I just love all things fantasy. I co-coordinate the sci-fi and fantasy track at Con Nuga, which is a smaller convention in Chattanooga, which will be held in February.
Okay. Uh-oh, did we lose? We lost JR. We are ridden with technical issues. Much like the book. This is very fitting, right? We're trying to get this thing going just like the book.
We'll wait for JR to come back in a minute. We'll start off without him, and I'm sure he'll hop back in. But we did get a question from the chat to start it off. For those of you in the chat, we are speculating and talking about the Winds of Winter today. Song of Ice and Fire, the Winds of Winter. When's it happening? No one knows. And that's the big topic, of course. Mr. Parker in the chat asked, do we have any idea when the Winds of Winter will be coming out? We have hints. Not to put a date on it, because then you're just setting yourself up for disappointment, because there are other books out there, everyone. Big shock. There are other books to read. So please take a break from tweeting at George and yelling at him about not finishing the books. That's not going to get us anywhere. But I think from what we know, he's holed up in a mountain, right? In his little cabin in the mountains. And he just actually wrote a blog post yesterday saying that he's writing the books. And it seems from what a couple people have analyzed, he might be in more of an editing and rewriting kind of stage. So we could be lucky. I don't want to get the hype going, but we could be lucky, right?
I'm feeling the same way where I don't want to get too excited yet, but I feel like the energy coming from George has been a lot more positive and a lot more productive. Like he's even mentioned which chapters he's working on. I think he posted the other day he's been working long into the night or something like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like he's in a better headspace, or at least it seems that way than he was a couple of years ago. So if I had to put like a date, I just think you can't because it'll never be exactly when you say it will.
Yeah.
But if I was being super positive next year, if I'm being more realistic, maybe the year after that, maybe like 2022.
Van, what do you think?
Well,
What's
yeah.
your year? Put a year on it, Van.
Part of the problem is that there's such a tremendous lead time with a big book from a big publisher. You know, I mean, if a book came out this year, you can know that the author probably finished it over a year, maybe 2 years ago. And so even if he does get it all written and edited in the next few weeks or months, it could still be a year or two before, because you know he's got editors at whichever publisher is doing it now, they're going to pour over it, make triple check everything, because Lord knows if they don't, we all will, right? So they got to catch everything they can catch, because there's millions of amateur editors out there just waiting to pounce on anything that's the least bit out of place. So yeah, I would think a couple of years. I wanted to say, by the way, just to throw this out there too, I calculated it's honestly been since about, it's been about 14 years since I really thoroughly read a Game of Thrones book. And I read most of like start to finish. I read the one that came out in 2011, Dance with Dragons. I read it in kind of pieces over a couple of years, but the last one I read cover to cover was in 2006, and it was just dawning on me. The previous to last Game of Thrones book came out before I met my wife, and I have a daughter in 7th grade now. So it's been a while.
Yeah, it has. We're all just waiting. We are. And, before this, the big thing I think that has caused this to take so long is, of course, the back and forth on the 5-year gap. George had initially wanted to give a 5-year gap. In the show adaptation, we see these characters have grown up a little bit. It's a little different. They add a little HBO spice in there, right? And they're older, which George wanted, because as we saw at the very end of the show, some of it seemed a little silly to have a little boy king that was actually supposed to be an omniscient Leto II ruler, right? Like we're missing a big chunk of writing. Thanks. As we know, we're missing a chunk, right, of like what's going to happen. We have ideas, we have bold strokes, and I think everyone's fate. We're probably going to go through the main characters today. Let's work on the POVs one by one and see what comes up is probably the best way to handle this, or regions even. But The Winds of Winter is going to be a big book to bridge that gap of what happens, I think.
Yeah, he wanted to do that before, right? I mean, I feel like his original plan was only like 3 books. Yeah. And he was just going to kind of zip them right along, and he just can't help. It's his writing style on these books is he gets down in the weeds and he just keeps gardening in the weeds, as they say, and it keeps growing and growing. And so, I mean, I know he's aiming for 2 more.
Yeah, but
I'll be surprised, put it that way.
Realistically,
I get the feeling that Winds of Winter will be huge, and then maybe A Dream of Spring will be smaller, because I'm expecting, if he sticks with 2, which, like you said, man, I don't know if he will, but if he does, he's going to have to cut down the POVs by a lot. I feel like it's going to be a bloodbath at some point in the book.
And to some of Van Allen's point about like the meta of bookmaking, he has to split it at a certain point. That is a big actual problem of like binding. You can't publish a book that's going to be this big like that. It's not at the cost point isn't going to work. It just doesn't sell. I mean, the marketability, you're looking at not just that, but the actual B2B sales of a book. He's going to have to cut it at some point. So we know, for example, there's a bunch of Arya chapters that we know got pushed to the Winds of Winter. One of them, Mercy, her first chapter in the Winds of Winter that we've read, that's already pre-published. It's going to get some edits probably, but it's been published for all to see by George. That was originally a Dance chapter. He had to move stuff from Dance and from Feast. I mean, Feast and Dance, he had to cut in half. So Paris says it's going to be more. His wife says it's going to be more, and I trust her. I don't don't trust George on this. I trust Paris.
That actually happened to me in real life. I was writing the second trilogy in my superhero series, and I pushed some stuff out of book 4 into book 5, and I pushed which dominoed some stuff out of book 5 and more into book 6. Book 6 ended up being almost as big as 4 and 5 put together, because you come up against the end and you got to fit everything in. There's nowhere else to go. You know what I mean? That's why I'm saying either these are going to be huge, or else there's going to have to be another one kind of as an epilogue. You know, maybe even the way that Stephen King did the 8th Dark Tower book that came along later on and kind of rebooted it a little bit. And like I have the hardcover of Noble House, which is a book about as long as I expect Winds of Winter to be, and it's in 2 volumes. Because like you said, you can't fit that in. You physically can't. It's in a similar metaphor. It's like trying to put out a 4.5-hour movie into movie theaters. It becomes cost prohibitive. You don't make any money by putting it out that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to use. There's practicalities to consider as well as just trying to get all the story in.
Yeah, I think that's what gets me the most mad is the quote unquote fans. I don't know if I'd call them fans with the vitriol they spit at him, but the people that get so up in arms at George, like, oh, how aren't you writing? Like, that's also not how art works. Like, you don't just run up to Van Gogh and be like, sorry about your depression, Van Gogh, but can you paint me an effing masterpiece right now? Like, that's not how art works. And I, for one, want another masterpiece. So let's get talking about the point of views, because we only have like 50 more minutes to talk about this. So let's get into some of the point of views that we are going to see in the Winds of Winter. I think we'll start off with Brienne, which is going to be a conversation I'm sure will intertwine with Jaime pretty often. So Brienne and Jaime will kind of be our first for the brainy shippers and fans out in the audience, the one of the Beauty and the Beast factions of the fandom, right? What do you guys think about Brienne? What's Brienne up to? When we last left her, she was guiding Jaime on a mission to get Sansa Stark, but as we know, that was to Lady Stoneheart.
If I remember correctly, right, she ends up and she says a word and we don't know what the word is. She yells out.
We do know the word. We do know the word. But
sword, right?
Sword, yep.
Yep.
Because she asked him to choose between, what do you choose? They choose the sword.
So I'm super excited to see that. Brienne's one of my favorite characters. So I'm excited to see that battle and then what happens with Jaime as well. I think Jaime will live past this ordeal. I think Brienne will too, but maybe not come out so unscathed.
Yeah, no, I have to believe that they individually are so important characters, and that their relationship, such as it is so important, that's going to go almost to the end. I feel like there's more to do with it than even the TV show did. So I would really like to see them drag that on, not drag, but I mean, like, I would like to continue out to a more natural fitting conclusion. Yeah. To spring.
Yeah. I think the Winds of Winter, there's so much happening too. It's a lot to think about. Like, how many chapters is this character gonna have? Like, realistically, if I put myself in the mindset, I see Brienne getting 2 to 3 chapters, because Jaime and her are gonna be in the same area for most of them. So Jaime's probably gonna get a chapter, Brienne's probably gonna get a chapter to cover a few weeks at a time to move the plot along, right? And I imagine that they have places to be, that they have, I don't know, Brienne's gonna be with Jaime in the beginning, who's gonna get the brunt of the chapters, but are they gonna split? So I think we'll see the Lady Stoneheart conflict. They're going to get out of it somehow. We know that Brienne chose the sword and her goal was to put Jaime there. I'm sure they'll outsmart that somehow and be kind of like what I think is going to be outlaws on the run together. You know what I mean? Like in the Riverland.
I love that.
I think we're going to see that romance really come in with them together on the run. And I think Jaime, of course, is probably going to get spooked, since he's only ever loved his sister his entire life. You know, I could see where there might be some toxic complications. So I think Brienne choosing Jaime over her honor of finding the Stark girls and maybe going off with Jaime, and maybe being more invested in Jaime than her mission of like following Catelyn's vow, that could be a big choice for Brienne, right? For someone who just had the big no chance, no choice. So
Yeah.
I do think they'll split up though towards the end of the book, but I think we're going to see them together like the whole first half of the book.
That also works too, like you were saying, just like chapter wise and lengthwise, is having 2 POV characters come together to kind of condense that.
Yeah, and I think I have ulterior motives also because I don't think Cersei is going to survive this book, which we can talk about Cersei next, but I don't think she'll survive Winds of Winter. Show definitely gets that wrong because we're missing Aegon, right? Aegon, sixth of his name, Blackfire. But I don't think she's smart enough to make it to the last book. I think she's making some mistakes. We did get a question. Do you think there's a way George can retire a POV in the Winds of Winter without them dying? Like treating them? Yeah. I think in the East, definitely, right? With Tyrion and Victarion and Dany and all of them. What do you think, Rebecca?
I feel like what I was saying, like, I think if you have two people that end up in the same area, either you just limit the number of chapters and kind of alternate between them, or you just retire one and have them featured in the other point of view chapter. If they're in the same area, I think the East you could condense. If people start congregating in the North, you might be able to condense a bit there as well.
Yeah, like Davos, Jon, Sansa. I mean, and Jon's dead, right? And like we all knew that before even he would come back, before the show even did it. Like it was one of those moments where we're all waiting, like, all right, bring him back. But yeah, I think you can do a lot of condensing.
Well, there's going to come a point where the point of view threads have to end.
Yeah.
Eventually they're going to end. And so it's just a matter of when do you stop them, and do you stop some of them way earlier than others? And I mean, killing them is the easiest way, but we don't have to know what everybody is doing from their point of view all the way through to the end. So you can, I kind of want to see him start doing this, and you can still have, like, if you keep 10 or 20 out of the 5,000, you can still have them refer to people as being there. They don't all have to be telling us what they're doing, Every
and
scene
you can
doesn't
end
have to
similar to the beginning. Like the beginning, we start off very basic with the starts with Tyrion. That's probably what we're going to end with. And I also think it's going to be something really interesting, Dany, through other people's eyes. So when she comes back, I think we're going to see a lot of the things that she does through other people's eyes, which is going to change how we perceive her actions as well, like through Tyrion, etc.
I think that'll add some suspense as well. I think it'll add some suspense too if you kind of leave off not knowing exactly where a character goes and then they show up other places and someone else's POV. I think that could happen with Dany if she sails west.
Hey, JR, you back?
I think he's here.
Uh-oh.
Maybe. He's frozen.
He's working on it.
He's fighting an ice dragon, dang it.
Well, while we wait for JR, Dornish Dame sent us a question asking, whose POV do you think we'll get chronologically in Winds? Who first, Brienne or Jaime? Who will be open with on their arc?
Because we closed with Brienne, I wanted to say we'd open with her, but now I'm thinking maybe not, that it might be Jaime. I can see it either way. I don't know.
Yeah, I could totally see it either way. I'm not sure.
Well, with Jaime, we actually closed with Jaime last because Jaime gets Brienne just coming to him. So it would be interesting. George likes to do that thing where he starts a few days backwards before an event, and he'll be like, he'll have the characters a few days later, and they're like, I'm thinking back to this event that happened last month, and that's why I'm now stuck in this situation. And sometimes he does it with more traumatic ridden characters. And I think maybe starting with Brienne, especially because Brienne in Feast, just got her face ripped off and chewed off. And she now is apparently an outlaw with Jaime, probably on the run. So I don't know if we're even going to see the conflict. I wonder if we're going to get post Stoneheart conflict, and then we're going to see it through her memories. And that's our first.
That would be neat.
I like that. See it. Yeah. Sometimes the really intense, I just can't see him starting off with that intense of a chapter. Like, here's where they are. I bet he's going to do us that way. Dang it.
He does know some clever literary tricks that always, I've certainly learned a lot over the years reading how he does these things. So for sure.
Yeah. And
he kind of pioneered the whole point of view chapter from different characters. That's, some things like that had been done before, but not like the person's name is the chapter.
Not in this depth.
Right. Yeah.
And unfortunately, they keep growing.
Yeah. That's a warning sign. Yeah.
Well, not for the next couple books. I think we'll lose a couple. Well, let's go Cersei next. What do you think? Cersei next?
Okay.
Let's do it.
Right. last we lost Cersei, she, we thought she was screwed. She's on her way back to Casterly Rock because her uncle Kevin has taken over. But in the epilogue of A Dance with Dragons, we learned that Varys and the new regime that's trying to take over with Aegon, young Griff, and Jon Con, he is on that team. He has killed Kevin and Pycelle, the only dissenters in King's Landing, and now Cersei's glorious reign can continue. What do you think about Cersei in the Winds of Winter, Rebecca?
I'm with you. I don't think she'll make it out of the Winds of Winter. I do think Aegon, who I think is fake, Fagon, I do think he'll take King's Landing, and I think Cersei will be defeated. Whether she dies then or like retreats back to Casterly Rock, I'm not sure. But she'll definitely lose. I don't think she'll stay in King's Landing. I think Fagon will take it. I think everyone will love him at first. I think he'll get the faith on his side. He'll have Dorne on his side, and Cersei will be ran out of town at the minimum. But like you said, I don't think she is smart enough to make it out alive of this book.
It's a rough book to get out of.
Yeah, definitely. Now, who kills her? I'm not decided on that yet. I don't know. But I don't think she'll make it out alive.
Everything I remember about Feast for Crows was just constantly telling us that she was not competent to do her job, to do the job that was sort of thrust upon her. And it felt like the TV show went to great lengths to totally change her character so that it was more plausible that she could be the Iron Queen as she kind of was in the last couple of seasons. And so I always got the sense that was because they really liked the actress, and it was simpler than all the stuff George had planned, which would have taken more seasons and been more complicated. So yeah, I don't feel like the book Cersei is long for this world, but no, I mean, the surprise deaths are so often that I'm not willing to bet any money on a big death for her, because somebody could come out of the shadows and assassinate her too, and just out of nowhere, and it would totally fit in with the way the thing works. So, but yeah, I don't think she goes nearly as far in the books as she did in the TV show. I agree with that.
Yeah, when you think about Aegon missing from the TV show is the big thing. Young Griff missing, because you need something that makes Dorne matter, which obviously Dorne did not matter in the TV show because it didn't have that anchor. And that's what the book is kind of centering around. And when we leave Dorne in the last book, Doran was sending agents, he was sending sand snakes all around the nation, right? So he was sending Nymeria Sand to the capital with Myrcella to Cersei. Nymeria is going to be on the small council. So Nymeria is going to be kind of a little whisper in Cersei's ear. And when Varys kills Kevin and Pycelle, he's opening it back up for chaos. Yesterday, if you tuned in, Rebecca and I were both on the Tricksters in A Song of Ice and Fire panel. And what he does is make a vacuum, right? A power vacuum, the 1,000,000 power vacuums in King's Landing. So Nymeria thinks, and we've heard her say, oh, there should be a female queen, and they all wanted to crown Myrcella to make her like the queen and have some sort of claim to the throne. Tommen's going to die in this book. We know Tommen's going to die. The Tyrells are going to go down because half of the Reach wants power, and they'll revolt and they'll go to Aegon's side instead of stay behind this awful, stupid queen who's making horrible decisions with her big zombie knight next to her. Sir Robert Strong, not Gregor Clegane, by the way. Different guy. And the Sand Snakes are on their way. You have Tynes infiltrating the Fate, and Nymeria is going to be on the small council. So I think those are some really big things that the show left out, that like Dorne has a huge role to play in bringing it down. So I suspect that Cersei is going to be seduced by that Dornish culture. We see her actually kind of seduced by her bedmaid, Taena Merryweather, who's Myrish. We know that Cersei has a little bit of the fetishization thing going on. And I think she's going to fall for Dorne because they're going to promise her queenship, right? Because they believe in female sovereignty is fine. So she's going to fall for that, I think. I think that's going to be her undoing. I think they're going to have a second sack at King's Landing. They're going to let Aegon in. They're going to open those gates to him and let him in. There's going to be a whole new sack. Bye-bye, kids.
I think the Sand Snakes too might play a part in the death of Tom and Myrcella, or both. Especially Tyene with her poison skills. King's Landing, I wonder if one of them will get poisoned, which will just drive Cersei crazier.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
As if she needs anything else. But yeah.
Well, and I think that's like self-fulfilling prophecy is big for Cersei too. Right? Like, was there a way for her to live her life without that prophecy impacting it that she heard as a child? Probably, but she chose to follow it, right? Right then and there, killing her best friend and, you know, everything she did with her life, she chose it. So I don't know, Cersei, kind of messed up, girl. Well, before we move on to another point of view, we had a question on slave revolts in Volantis, money troubles in Bravos, uniting the cows. How much do you think the Winds of Winter will cover the many events in Essos, or do you think we'll primarily be focusing on Westeros and the Wall?
Is that not why it's so big and taking so long? Is it's basically two different stories at some points, you know, completely like two completely different books. So, and that was what was so weird about A Feast for Crows, that he kind of put it out with only half of the material in it. I don't know that they want to make that mistake again. I feel like the publishers now look back and think it was kind of a mistake to do it that way. Fans certainly seem to, right? So
yeah, I suppose. I think a lot of people just complain because they can, but A Feast for Crows is like, well, if you take some time, you know, in the future, Van, because I know we have so much time on our hands. It's not like there's any conventions to go to, right? Or like anything to do. But in the future, take time. And if you haven't looked it up, the reread putting them together for A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, there's several rereads. There's The Boiled Leather. There's A Ball of Beasts, because what he did was it's breaking it apart logistically. He broke it into regions and he was like, these POVs and these POVs. And if you actually put them back together, there are different reread structures and you have to work. I'm sorry, I'm telling you to do more work. But like if you do it, there's certain things you'll catch in contrast that I think really enrich it. And it does suck. Like I would have preferred it as one huge novel, but it wasn't possible. So I think the split was the best they could do. I don't know. Okay. But I do think you're right that they might not want to do it again. Like, I think that's the point, is there's probably going to be 3 books instead of a split up, no POV situation.
I think if they wanted to do it again or were willing to do it again, I think we would have already had Winds of Winter about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that we haven't got the book yet is that they don't want to do it that way.
Yeah. We had another question from A. Crisp. Each book in A Song of Ice and Fire has built up the magic aspect of the series. To what extent do you think magic will be expanded on in The Winds of Winter?
I hope it's expanded a lot. That's my favorite part. And it's so funny because I tell people all the time that Bran is like one of my top 3 characters, and everyone's like, what? Because there's a lot, especially people that just watch the show, like, oh, I hated Bran, he was so boring, but like him and the tree and the magic and Bloodraven, I love it. I hope we get a lot more of that. I hope we get some history on the White Walkers and the others. I hope we get some history on the Children of the Forest. I'd love some exposition there, and just see more of what's going on. With Bran especially, but any of the magical characters. I love hearing more about the magic and getting hints and clues of what's going on in the background with them.
You know, the amazing thing, I'm sure you guys you're always caught up on things, but I just recently saw an interview with George where he said that originally he wasn't even going to have magic in it. It was going to be stuff that seemed like magic and was all going to be science fiction. And then when he decided to put the dragons in, like instead, this was an example I liked. He said the Targaryens would have dragons as a symbol, but it was just because of their affinity for fire, not because of actual dragons. It was going to be they had telepathic firepower, like Firestarter or something. And so once he decided to put dragons in it, that just opened up the magical elements for everything. So the dragons are responsible for all the other magic being in the books, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, that he originally, we originally wanted it to be like psionic. Okay, George, D&D, I see you. And it's his friend Phyllis Eisenstein actually was who convinced him to put the dragons in instead, and that was the right call. So good for Phyllis. It was the right call, right? And especially for Daenerys as a character, it makes us emotionally drawn to her too. It's like this huge, that's the eve of the story, right? It's other eve of dragons. So I love that. And Do you guys have any other ideas about Bran's POV while we're talking about the magic? I mean, we left him in the cave and maybe or maybe not digesting his best friend, right? So that he can have stronger visions. Jojen Reed, no, leave him alone, okay. And I don't know, that's where we might have left Bran. So in the caves, what do you think with Bloodraven?
I think Jojen paste is real. That theory that he's eating Jojen, just because we know that Jojen was not long for this world and he's been missing for a bit. So I do buy into that theory. I think he will continue training. I think it'll get darker. His powers will get darker, but it'll have that kind of juxtaposition with him being young and not really realizing it. Like I said, I hope we get some backstory with him learning more about the others and the children and what happened there. I think he's the best candidate to give us that. I don't think he will be like the show where he is just a void of personality zombie with a library in his head. I didn't like that. I hope that's not what happens. I don't think it will be. I think it'll be kind of like a weird amalgamation of Bran still being partly Bran, but also having these other memories, which if anyone reads Dune, it kind of gives me some Dune vibes.
Yep, like I said earlier, it is Leto too.
I
I mean, come on, omniscient worm god. If you saw the finale of Game of Thrones, you know, like that was where I was like, oh, it makes sense. George was doing Dune.
Yeah, I totally get that Leto 2 vibes from Bran. I'm trying to think if I wrote some notes down if I had anything else. Oh,
Bran is going to put us on the golden path.
I hope so.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
which I mean, with the show ending, I think would kind of be a nice little parallel there. I do think we'll have the hold the door moment. If I remember, that's one of the things they said they did get from George. So I think he will leave the cave and we'll get a hold the door moment, whether it's exactly the same or not. But we will have something similar to that. I just don't think Bran's characterization will be the same at all.
Yeah, what else could his name stand for? Once you heard it on the show, you're like, well, of course. What else could it be? I mean, but yeah, no, Bran is such a great plot device, and it's pretty obvious from the moment he went out the window in the first book that he was being set up to be, Charles Xavier of Westeros. So yeah, I mean, he's both a useful character and a useful tool for the writers. So I imagine that he will continue to serve in that role. But yeah, I'm not sure he makes a better wizard than king. I'm not sure I want him to be the king instead of the wizard. I don't know. He makes a better Merlin than King Arthur. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, no, and I think the bigger thing is it's the Fisher King mythology, right? The Fisher King in just like old Arthurian, it was the wounded king or the maimed king, right? Who was very humble and kind of understood the people. I mean, we even get the chapter in Clash of Kings where Bran, the littles in the north leave him those little cakes. And he promises in his head, he's like, someday I am going to pay them all back tenfold for what they did for us out here in the middle of nowhere. Like just this cute, sweet little boy. Like there's no way, Rebecca is totally right, because there's no way you can lose that sweet little boy who's dishes at the feast over to old Nan because he loved her and to his siblings, and he sent gross food down to the Freys because screw the Freys. There's no way he can lose that characterization. And I think that comes also from, I think it'll change. Like he will definitely he'll have to grow and take in a lot more knowledge. And I don't think it'll be exactly that, but I do know he can't be that sweet little boy forever, I guess. Yeah. Well, I guess we're in Stark realm. We're in Stark territory, the best territory. We're in the north.
Oh,
What do we want to go with?
Stark shirt on.
Represent.
Yes.
What Stark shall we go with? The dead one? Which one?
There's so many.
I'm sorry. Oh God, I'm so mean. Let's start with Jon. Let's get in there. What do you think about our prince, our Jon Snow? When do we see him?
I need for Jon, for what happened to him at the end of the last book, I need there to be a point to it. Because honestly, on the show, the only point was that he gets out of his oath, right? That was through a loophole, And so what else did he gain what was the point of any of that other than no longer has to be the Night Watch? What was the point?
Van, what was the point of any of it?
That's right. What was so I just need it to mean something and not just be a lawyer's loophole, So otherwise it seems pointless.
So we left off Jon's dead. I do think he's inside Ghost. I think most people kind of, I don't want to say accepted, but I definitely think he's inside Ghost. And I don't think we will see a Jon POV until way later in the book. I think we'll get some stuff. I don't know if we'll get a Ghost POV, but we will get something about him being inside of Ghost. In the books, Shireen and Selyse are still at the wall, if I'm correct. They did not go with Stannis like they do in the show. So one of the other things that they said they definitely got from George was Shireen being sacrificed. So I'm wondering if she will get sacrificed and that power will be what brings Jon back. Maybe, I don't know. That's something I've toyed with. But I do think she'll die at the wall. Melisandre's there and her mom's there and her mom's the fanatic. But I think Jon will be resurrected just like he was in the show. Well, not stylistically wise, but he will come back. And we'll go south at some point. I think the King in the North thing will happen, and we will probably find out about his true parentage.
I will argue that I don't think that, like, Shireen will not burn unless Stannis is there. It has to be Stannis burning her, or else what's the point? To copy Van Allen, what's the point? Then other just a loophole. Like, she has to be burnt by Stannis. Like, he has to have lost all. And Jon, when he does come back, I think the King in the North stuff is super valid because the Northerners are still going to choose not Stannis. The important thing is that Stannis is up there and Stannis is like, I'm the king. I'm the one that saved these people. I'm going to do the work. And he's like, why won't they like me? And you could
start
killing off an entire people that are coming from the North if they don't subscribe to your religion. Because I think there's a word for that when people for religious reasons, there's a persecution about. Anyways, but I digress. Stannis, good guy. And he has it's about him, right? If Shireen gets burnt by Mel, it can't, we won't have Jon for the first quarter of the book. There's no way. And if we do get him, it's a ghost chapter, damn it. It is a ghost chapter. But otherwise, I think when all is lost, they're going to choose Jon, turn to a Stark in the North because that's what they trust. That's what feels right and good and warm and fuzzy in the winter, not Stannis. And Stannis is going to be at his wit's end. He's going to have nothing else. He's going to be like, I'm Azor Ahai though. And then it's no, it just turns out you killed your daughter and you're not Azor Ahai and everything sucks for you. And also he's making the Night Fort his home.
Yeah, creepy.
Some creepy stuff has happened there. I think it's going to be middle of everything. And maybe it will be against the others. We did get a question, I think, where someone said, Max L in the chat, hey Max, said, do you think we'll see an actual other in Winds? And I think it's got to ante up in this book. We have to see other, 1-to-1, see an other. I think it's got to progress really fast.
Yeah.
I like your point that it's more impactful if Stannis is there with his daughter. Because in this show, I always got they didn't play up the fact that he really wasn't with R'hllor, but his wife was. He was just kind of ride. Whereas in the show, he was a bit more of a fanatic. So if he did cross over that line in the book, that would be a holy crap moment.
Well, and the other thing is he's not a fanatic at all. And it's more that he just is a middle child. And when someone told him he did a good job, and Melisandre keeps telling him he's doing a great job, savior of the universe. And he's at the point where he believes it. And when you believe that you are this destined prophetic then things don't matter as much for you, right? The things you do have less impact. For me, I'm a prophetic hero, then it doesn't matter if I littered the other day. You know what I mean?
It's for the greater good.
It's the greater good. And that's what Stannis' whole problem is he's a middle child. I digress. We'll move along. Hopefully neither anyone on this panel middle children, you guys?
No.
I'm the baby.
I'm an only child.
I'm the oldest.
Yeah, I'm the importantest.
I have a question, Chloe, I want to throw out there real quick, if I can squeeze it in.
Yeah.
George has said that he was considering this big twist for this book, and he decided he is going to do it. Do we have any idea what that big twist is that he's doing?
there's a lot of speculation because it was on someone who was dead in the show, but alive in the book still. So get out your pen.
Yeah.
It could be like 50 people. I wouldn't be surprised. I have a friend, you guys might know of him. His name's Brendan B. Fish on the internet. He's on a podcast called Not a Cast, A Song of Ice and Fire. And he has this theory that Barristan's going to turn his cloak one more time to Aegon. And
that's what popped in my head just now as well.
So it makes me wonder if he might pull that. And I would never admit that in front of this friend because I think it's a stupid theory and it's not going to happen. But if it did happen, I would probably go, maybe that's what the twist was, huh? And I think we're never going to know, like, until.
Yeah, Barristan popped in my head as well when you said that, just because he was one of the ones. I love Barristan. It's not that he's my ultimate fave, but when they killed him in the show and he just like went down like kind of a loser, I was like, that hurt a little bit because he's so awesome in the books. So when you said someone who's dead in the show, I was like, oh, Barristan, I would love to have something crazy happen with him. Although if he turned cloak, that would hurt my heart a bit as well.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to Arya. I know we had a question about how she'd returned to Westeros in the chat from, I think it was from A Crisp. So what do you think about Arya, Rebecca, as the Stark stan as well?
Let me see. I do think she will go home. I don't think, to be honest, if we're like, I take the show as like, maybe there's some overarching ideas that might carry over, but don't take it as like what's exactly going to happen. I kind of hated her Bravos plotline show. I think she'll get more training. It'll be a lot more interesting in the book, but eventually she will go home. And I would love it if she meets up with Nymeria again. We get some of those wolf dreams, definitely more emphasis of those in the books. So I would love it if there was more of that. No parkour across rooftops.
No stabby stab in the tummy.
More like dark magic-y training. I would like that.
I don't really care where she goes or what she does, as long as she gets a little bit of her revenge. She gets to check some names off of her list. Otherwise, she's probably the character I have the least idea what they're going to do with in the books, because in the show it was just like they turned her into a superhero, and that was clearly not what George had in mind. In fact, I would argue that of all the major characters, she's the one that probably had the most completely pulled out of their rear end stuff.
Yeah. I think they have no freaking clue. Well, here's a buckle up. You ready for this one, you two? I think
I'm holding on
to Westeros, right? Like she's going to come back. I'm not sure on the motivation. Maybe Jane Poole ends up with Justin Massey in Bravos. They're kind of going that direction, right? I mean, she's getting out of there because of Stannis' camp. So I think a lot depends on that. But I think she's going to get wind of what's going on at home, hear about Jon maybe dying or Jon being king in the north or whatever's happening when it works out time-wise. And I think she's coming home. And I think probably on a boat, for those looking for specifics on how it's a boat, I'm guessing. I don't know. But I think she's going to come back. And I think that Brienne, instead of doing her whole duty with Lady Stoneheart and like killing Cat and looking her in the eye, zombie Cat, and being like, you got to die, I think Arya's going to have to do it because Brienne's going to be forsaking her honor with Jaime, probably literally, probably hooking up. They're probably going to be doing it in a tense but I think Arya's coming back to the Riverlands. I think that she'll probably show up when Red Wedding 2.0 happens. She'll see some of the slaughter. And I think that she will meet her mom in a clearing and she will have to give her mercy. And I think that's what's going to happen in the Winds of Winter for Arya.
I love that. Yeah. That would be like, it'd be so sad, but it'd also give a lot of closure there too, I think. And it would give Stoneheart a nice ending too, because I don't think Stoneheart will last through this book either.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's all. That always felt to me like a whole angle that what was he even thinking? I just never got that. So yeah.
I'm seeing some chatter in our YouTube comments about people criticizing that I've answered that about Arya coming back on a boat before in 2017's Ice and Firecon Stark panel. And yes, I did. And I said it again, and it was still hysterical. Thank you, Eliana, co-host of my podcast. We've got some, hecklers in the crowd today, but all right, next Stark.
Sansa?
Talk about her. Let's just talk about her, Rebecca. Last time we left Sansa, she's in the Vale. She's flourishing. If you've read her Winter chapter, Elaine 1, it is wonderful. She is out in the good, fresh air of the Vale, hanging out with girls her age, possibly giving away too many secrets about her being a Stark on accident. She's in disguise as Elaine Stone. And yeah, that's Sansa. What's up? She's about to start a tourney and a dance, a feast.
A lot of ideas about Sansa, and I don't know which one I want to go with, like what my theory is. But we are seeing her set up with Harry the heir, who is the heir to the Vale. So there will be some manipulation going on there. Will she actually marry him? I don't know. I don't know if they'll get that far. Maybe. I don't think Harry's long for this world. He seems kind of dumb. So I do think she will get to practice her manipulations on him, use some of the lessons that she's learning from Littlefinger. I have seen a couple interesting theories of her maybe being in talks with Fagon, maybe. There's some setup there. I don't know. I do think eventually she will gain power. I don't know if she will be queen like they did in the show, but I do think she will rise through the ranks and use her skills that she's learned against Littlefinger at some point.
What do you think, Van?
Yeah, Sansa to me is the most puzzling. I don't know. I just it's Littlefinger is the main question there. But it's just so, again, it's like with Arya. It's just that the two girls have been treated so differently, over the years that I couldn't begin to even guess. I don't even want to go there. I'm sure I'll love it.
Well, I've never had a thought about Sansa. Anyways, next POV. No, I'm just kidding. I have like, if there's one thing I have a lot of thoughts about, it's Sansa in the Winds of Winter. And I've written a little bit about it at my blog. You can scroll forever if you feel like it at lizenarborgold.com. But I think that Sansa's, just like Arya and Bran and all the Jedi training they're receiving, like Sansa is getting her own Jedi training, right? And we talked a little during the Trickster panel yesterday about how Sansa is, she's being handed information from Littlefinger, and it's kind of at the point where she needs to choose, right, what to do with this information. And I think she's going to start putting some pieces together of all this information. And as she starts adding 2 + 2 against Littlefinger, there's also the fact that she's in the Vale, which is where her dad grew up. And they love the Starks there. In fact, they wanted to go to war for the Starks twice. And Lady Lysa, now that Jon Arryn's gone, is like, no, you can't go fight in a war. We need our armies. We need our safe place on the castle on a cloud, up here. And now Lysa's gone. Sansa, I think, is going to have a really cool scene, and I have it all mapped out in my head. Remember when Kat was in the inn and took Tyrion at the crossroads, and she called upon each house and said, are you not loyal to my father, to my lord father? Are you not loyal to Lady Went, to the Wents of Harrenhal that my lady mother came from? And she calls on them and gets their allegiance. And when they say yes, then she gets their swords to her cause by slowly saying, weren't you friends with my dad? Aren't you our friends? Well, I think that's going to mirror. I think Sansa's going to do the same thing. I think, so there's that huge tourney. Harold Herring's going to die. His last name is literally Harding, Hardyng, like a herring. He's like blue herring. Like, I think he's going to die. I think he's done at the tourney. He'll probably get killed by Lynn Corbray. Stabby stab, joust. We hear about how he's not very skilled. So, like, he's an up jump squire. But with him out of the way, I think Sansa has to go home, like, on her own name. And she's going to either get kidnapped by Shadrich the mouse, right? The ginger guy that's around asking people, like, oh, there's a Stark girl afoot, I hear, looking for her to get money. I think she might get kidnapped by him, but maybe, like, it's a failed attempt. And that kills her too soon. So that messes up Littlefinger's plan. And I think that's what's going to happen, is Littlefinger's plan is going to get so messed up by the end of the book, Sansa will have the upper hand and she'll ask to go home.
I think she'll, like you said, I think she'll get the might of the Vale behind her. That's one thing that the show just kind of threw in there, like the Vale showing up and not giving much anything behind it, really. They just kind of show up and you're like, yay. But I think Sansa will have more ties to those after living there and sowing some seeds in the Vale. I love that.
I think it's like the only, like, how else, right? Like, that's how you're going to go home. And it can't be by Littlefinger, Where's him? We gotta drop that guy. It's nothing but trouble. Jeff Hartline in the chat, never heard of him. He asked, does Bronzio and Royce join the Vale when they go north? Nestor's probably gonna stay and like maybe he and Nestor work it out. Like I think that she's gonna promise them control of the Vale in the end. I think she's gonna give control of the Vale to the Royces, like because of Littlefinger. You know, like I think that's the ticket. I just don't know how that split up's gonna be. I don't know. The Royces are going to be like big, though. I think they're going to be instrumental because I mean, we start the whole story with a Royce, with Waymar Royce.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All righty, let's scooch ahead because we only have a handful of minutes left, and let's talk about the big one. I think we also missed out on some Ironborn stuff. Any quick Ironborn lightning round thoughts from you, Rebecca?
Asha's with Stannis, and she has King's Blood. That's interesting. I don't know exactly where that will go, but I'm interested to see. It would be great if Theon, like if Ramsay is defeated, if Theon would kill Ramsay in the end. We get that nice scene in the show with Sansa, but that's not happening in the book at all. It would be cool if Theon did that. I would just like that. But that's just like me wanting that to happen. But that would be we have Theon up there. I'd love to see Theon and Asha reunited.
Van?
I have no interest in the Ironborn at this point. All that off and let it flow.
Yeah. Victarion's gonna die, idiot.
Yeah, he's a dummy.
Raise a Kraken and demolish Old Town, which is gonna be great. Can't wait to watch Old Town get freaking just melted down.
Destroyed.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. That is gonna be so cool. I think we'll lose at least like a couple of Tyrells in that. We'll see. And then Asha, I think she's gonna join someone's war. I just don't know who's yet. Maybe it's Stannis's. Maybe she abandons that and joins up Stark. Or Theon's gonna join up with Starks. I think that's hopefully. We'll see. We'll see. I think he does have to end somewhere near Bran.
Yeah, I think he gets his redemption that way. That's one of the things in the show I actually liked, him dying for the Starks, and I think that would be fitting.
Yeah, exactly. You don't start it out the way you did in the first book with him being close and then do everything. You got to bring it full circle. Absolutely.
For sure. All right. This is it. This is the one. Let's move to Dany. This has to cover the most ground. When we last left Dany, she was being circled in the tall grass after pooping and having a bad time for days.
Great scene.
Diarrhea for like days after eating bad plants that, you know, she has no clue where she is in Vaes Dothrak. And so, yes, she is with the Dothraki. What's going to happen? Where's she going in the Winds of Winter? Rebecca, tell me.
I think the show gets this right, that she will be Vaes Dothrak. She will become the great Khaleesi. You know, maybe she's the stallion who mounts the world. They join her. I think something along those lines will happen. They will end up going back to Meereen, winning the day. We'll get some scenes of what the heck is going on in Meereen while she's been gone, because we have the confluence of the Ironborn, the Masters fighting. Like, you have so much going on there. She'll come back and they will win. She'll probably ally with the Ironborn. Do they take one of her dragons? Maybe. Before Victarion eats it. Then the only question I have is they've been kind of setting up some stuff with Volantis. That would take so much time. So will they go sack Volantis? I don't know. But I do think by I don't want to say the very end of the book, but I think she will be in Essos for most of the book. And towards the end is when she will leave for her to be in Westeros in All of a Dream of Spring. I do think too, that they will probably have some time jumps where we won't know what's going on with her. We'll get some stuff, and then she will be moving more rapidly than some of the other characters.
Well, my main concern about Dany is that George has got to take the time in the room, give her enough pages, enough words, that if he's going anywhere near where the TV show went, she needs to get there naturally, organically. It can't be a sudden heel turn like a wrestler, in the last act. We've got to see her moving in that way subtly. And I thought the problem with the show was that they had to get her, they had legit physical logistics to get her together with people. Then they had to do the mental logistics of getting her character this way and then that way. And there wasn't enough time, enough room just a handful of episodes of a show to make that realistic. And I think that's one of the main problems that most people had. And so I'm not morally opposed to the direction they took her in the show, as long as George can do it plausibly and convincingly and make us all feel it. And it needs to feel almost inevitable in hindsight, and not artificial. That's pretty much all I ask. The details I'm honestly not that concerned about, as long as they just get the character right. He gets, and I mean, he will, right? It's his thing. He'll get it right. It's gotta be done right.
I think there's going to be people that don't like it no matter what. I think it's being laid in the books. After some of the slow rereading we've been doing and going through only characters by characters, it's in Jon's plot. Ygritte is absolutely foreshadowing for a fiery woman. Val and Ygritte, like those loves and how they act with Jon, and like how Jon thinks he killed Ygritte, and like when he finds the arrow and it wasn't his, he's like, oh, thank God, like I thought it was her. But Ygritte says to him, hey, eventually, after all the war's done, we can come back here and just live in this tower, this random tower after the war. And he like thinks, and he's like, the word was like a spear thrust to the heart. And I'm like, there's stuff like that like it's something that Jon's fighting with. Jon's plot, I think, is gonna have to grapple with a lot of big war. He's seen small war. He's seen fighting for your life against others. He's seen saving the free folk from their doom. But I think Jon and Dany's love has to be this twisted knife of a tragedy. And I think for Dany, the big thing in this is, you mentioned Volantis, Rebecca, and Illyrio. Illyrio has basically backed Aegon, and originally he wanted it to be Aegon and Dany, but changed. And by the time Dany gets to Westeros, not only is her faction also accidentally killed Quentyn. Her dragons did kill Quentyn, and it turns out Quentyn's bros that were with him are total jerks, and they don't even care if it wasn't her fault. What do you think they're going to tell Dorne that happened to Quentyn? The Martells are totally allying with Aegon, and missing Aegon from the show is the problem. That was the crux, right? Like that was what we were missing. Aegon in the show was too much, and I get that. There was no way to do this show justice, like in a canon manner. There it wasn't. I get that. It's an adaptation. But Aegon provides that juxtaposition of stealing a throne. You have Quentyn possibly usurping Arianne. You have Dany, showing up, and she's like, all this hard work, I just abolished slave trade. I did this, and gave my throne away. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So I think Volantis, Illyrio, once she hears what's up, sorry, Illyrio, bye-bye, see Drogon. I think that's going to happen. And I don't think we'll have time for House of the Undying, much like we don't have time now for it. But I think that Karth is a really big one. That's a really big one that like they just, the white glove left by Zaro Zoandatis, that felt pretty big that she just flew away on her dragon from all that. So Tyrion's going to counter a lot of that stuff, right? Tyrion's going to take a big part of that plot. So I think we'll have time, but it's going to be a lot.
Yeah, it is. She is the most ground to cover, but I totally agree with you that she's going to show up. Aegon's going to have everyone like in the palm of his hand. He's so great. It doesn't matter if he's fake or not. He's going to be the savior they all wanted, and she's going to show up knowing, even if she finds out he's fake, no one's going to care. And it's going to set her up to be a big villain from over the seas with nuclear bombs coming, no matter how she sees herself or what her intentions are.
Yeah. All right. I wish we had more time. We have to get off the channel soon. So let's do some final thoughts and where we can find you on the internet if you want everyone to go follow your stuff. Rebecca.
Final thoughts. I'm just so excited. I can't wait for this book to come out, and I'm actually feeling positive about it for the first time in a while. I'm with you. I wish people would leave George alone and just let him write and like do his thing. But I'm finally feeling like it is closer than it is farther away. So that's really exciting. Thanks everyone for tuning in too. You can find me at Chewbacca Cosplay on Instagram. That's where I post my cosplays. And if you're in the Atlanta, Tennessee area, Conuga's in February. Hopefully we'll have some great sci-fi fantasy panels there too. So that's me.
All right, Van.
I'll just say very quickly that I have confidence in George that he'll work it out. I think it'll work out to our satisfaction. And I think the fact that it's taken this long is because he's been trying to work it out right and not just slap it out there. So you can find me, well, the central hub is www.plexico.net. All right.
And of course, my name is Chloe. Like I said, I am with the podcast Girls Gone Canon. You can listen to us pretty much anywhere on the internet that your heart desires, Apple, Google, you name it. Check us out, Spotify. And you can find me online as Lizen Arbor on Twitter or lizenarborgold.com. Thanks so much for tuning in, and please stay tuned for the rest of the panels going on today.
Woo.
Bye, everyone.